Introduction to Game Server Hosting on AWS.
The prerequisites for this course include some familiarity with game tech and some experience with AWS. This overview highlights the main approaches offered by AWS that are commonly used for game server hosting and identifies important differences in how they're used.
This slide shows options for hosting game servers on AWS. The first option is to use EC2 instances. The work of installing and configuring the software necessary to host a game server is up to you. This approach is the most flexible and customizable option, but it also involves the most DevOps work. There are infrastructure features, such as Amazon EC2 autoscaling, that can be useful for game server hosting. But this doesn't work in all cases for games, because autoscaling commonly uses infrastructure metrics rather than game metrics to trigger scaling events. With the additional control and flexibility of using AWS core services directly, there are many additional development tasks. For this reason, game developers often consider managed solutions. An incrementally more managed approach is to host game servers in containers. Containers are a different kind of abstraction from a virtual machine. One key benefit of containers is that the requirements of a game server map closely to a container orchestration service like Kubernetes. This means that control and management of containers can be used to perform tasks required to host game servers. For example, you can specify how many copies of a container should be running in various locations, and the actions taken by the container system will result in multiple game servers running in those locations. Containers provide automated system configuration, migrating that responsibility from a DevOps role where it has to be handled on the machine to a developer role where it is handled within the build of a container. Creating reproducible deployments is much easier. Containers are famous for making workloads portable across environments, and this can be useful for migrating workloads from on-premise to cloud. In practice, portability is not automatic, and there are often dependencies on services outside of the container system. Containers are useful for microservices designs, where the software is somewhat simpler and complexity is pushed into the network layer. This can have advantages during deployment and when making updates. Amazon GameLift is a fully managed, server-oriented solution. You develop your game software to conform to GameLift's method for hosting games. Amazon GameLift does undifferentiated heavy lifting to achieve scalability and low latency in a game server deployment. These are the hardest software engineering problems in game tech. Your main responsibility in using Amazon GameLift is conforming your game server to the management and control services. For example, you'll need to integrate certain API calls into your software to coordinate with GameLift during game startup and gameplay. Amazon GameLift provides the highest level of automation for game server hosting on AWS. There's another paradigm for using Amazon GameLift based on a key feature called Amazon GameLift Fleet IQ Game Server Groups. Instead of conforming to Amazon GameLift's management and control, you can use specific features of Amazon GameLift in your own management and controlled context. One of the main values of this approach is that it allows you to use Fleet IQ server groups to allocate and manage EC2 spot instances. Spot instances can reduce cost over on-demand instances by up to 90%. However, spot instances can be interrupted, which could interfere with gameplay. Fleet IQ manages groups of instances to reduce the chances of interruption, making the pool of instances more available for games. Fleet IQ Game Server Groups gives you a customizable game server hosting option with less automation and more DevOps than standard Amazon GameLift, but less DevOps than building your own hosting solution using EC2 instances. A key benefit of Fleet IQ Game Server Groups is that it enables a gradual path for migrating game tech workloads from on-premise to the cloud.